fine.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, so really my thoughts are, I'll just tell you a little bit about the farm, where we are, what we're doing, and the historical background and the things we're finding. So the farm, small family farm in East Suffolk. We're right on a big tidal river, about 3 miles in from the sea. Nearest big town is Felixstowe. Sutton Hoo, obviously you know, will have know about the Longship, is about 4 miles upstream. So we're right between the Sutton Hoo and the sea. So anything that was going up and down the river from time immemorial has always come past our farm. Now, from the point of view of the farm itself, we're very traditional, small family farm. We're growing traditional crops, wheat, barley, sugar beet, potatoes. And over the last couple of years, I put 40% of the farm into environmental crops, which range from some really quite specific things like growing green crops, flowering crops that will produce insects at the right height above the ground at the right time of year for ground nesting bird chicks to feed on. So really quite specific. I've also, one of our big issues is sea level rises. This is farming at the sharp end for real. So rather than fight sea level rises, I've cut our seawall in 6 places and allowed the sea to come in, which is creating more salt marsh. That's Britain's most endangered habitat. But what I'm saying to the sea, for want of a better reason, is come in. I can't stop you, but come in under my terms, if you like. Work with the problem, not try and fight the problem, because I know I'll never win the problem. From the historical point of view, we are awash with archaeology. The most sort of well documented is a medieval port, which is in the Domesday Book. More recently, over the last couple of years, we have found crop marks, circles, flints, things like that, which are pointing towards a Bronze Age settlement. We also have Roman settlements. We also think we have quite a large number of Saxon small settlements, because all of this is coming from a promontory which is overlooking the medieval port and the main river. So an ideal spot both for defense and domestic habitation. We do a bit of field walking. I have LiDAR surveys and all that sort of thing done. We have a very good drone operator who has done some really high resolution sort of overflies of the entire farm for us. From my own point of view, a little bit about me. I'm a farmer. I used to be a part-time university lecturer, teaching landscape history, interpretation, and earth sciences. And I'm now back to doing, shall we say, farming and diversification, along with education, which I love. I think that really sort of sums everything up in a nutshell. What we have, and what I would like to get a lot of good, preferably university input and research into, is exploring this landscape in great detail. We've had a bit of work done. Last year, I had all of the wooden structures that were showing at low tide, both out in the river and quite a long way back into the farmland. And it would appear that we have everything from very early Saxon fish traps in behind the sea wall in what would have been ditches, through to structures, we simply don't know what they are. We know we have a Roman dock. We need help with interpretation. We need help with more exploration. And there is basically a sort of almost a bottomless pit of good, interesting things that can be explored. So over to you guys, really.
Okay, so does anyone have any specific questions, maybe about a bit more of what Patrick thinks on the farm? Anything?
Sorry, is the farm anything?
Sorry, I was going to say something. So you mentioned flints.
Yes.
I think there was something, I don't know if you read, was there something about hand axe, was that?
Oh, the left-handed
Yes.
hand axe.
Yeah,
Is there
a couple of beautiful hand axe, which is extraordinarily rare because it's left-handed.
Yes.
Most people think of our ancestors as being predominantly right-handed or all right-handed, but left-handed really makes it very human, very special. I'm left-handed, so it's almost a direct connection to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a picture of that, I'd be really intrigued to see. Because I know hand axes have specific forms you can kind of date to specific kind of cold and warm stages. So
yes, I mean,
really
we had
see what it looks like.
a few people look at it, and the general thought is that it's a European flint that has probably come across Doggerland.
Ah, okay.
That's the general thought, but we have arrowheads, quite a lot of sort of very run-of-the-mill work flints, but there has been, you're really starting with a blank canvas. There's never been a lot of academic, full-on research and field walking here. We've done a little bit of field walking, we've done a little bit of exploration, but we're right at the very beginning now of exploring this landscape.
Did you mention the bombers at all, Patrick?
Sorry, what was that? Did I
mention the World War II bombers?
What am I farming, did you say?
No, World War II.
Oh, yeah, sorry. World War II bombers. Yeah, I mean, we've got a Junkers 88 sitting in the, that was blown up in the marsh about 30 years ago. The pilot was still on board and so were the bombs. There's a flying fortress in the river, which was winched out in the 1940s, but we've recently found some more bits of it showing up. With that large storm Dark, or whatever it was called, earlier in the year, we lost.
Show that to the camera.
There's no camera showing.
Yeah, there is.
Okay. We lost a great deal of riverbank. We lost about 3 meters all the way along the edge of one field. And coming out of the edge of the riverbank are bits of what we assume are the American plane. There's also bits of wing. We don't know if it's wing, tail, what sections there are. There's all sorts of bits. But again, I'm very much at the beginning of what there is. There's we know that from the crashed German plane, one of the crew bailed out and he came down in his parachute right beside the parish church. We're a tiny little parish. And my farm foreman's mother took him in and gave him tea and cake. It's still a very human event for people around here. And on another occasion, I was talking to my farm foreman, my retired farm foreman, and we were looking at some ditching, and I asked him when the ditch was last dug out, and he told me in 1944 by Italian prisoners of war, and he could remember the name of the foreman of the gang of Italian prisoners of war who did the work. So, I mean, this is still within living memory. It's not past history, it's still present in people's minds.
Any other questions?
What sort of thing is it that you're hoping Durham will take part in? Is it people coming to Hemley, or you bringing stuff to Durham?
No, I would like people to come to me. I would say that we have run, in conjunction with St Andrews University, we're running a long-term, I also farm in Scotland as well as in Suffolk here. In Scotland, we've been running, I think we're in our 5th or 6th year of university digging, full-on summer digs, which have been very successful. We're unraveling again a landscape, and it's been so successful and been able to add so much to local knowledge in Scotland. I mean, one good example from this particular dig is that we found the gold sword pommel from the Duke of Cornwall's sword. Now, we know that the Duke of Cornwall stayed in the castle in the early 1200s. He had a sort of summer out. He sailed up from Cornwall, sacked St Andrews Abbey. He obviously must have stayed in the castle and used the jousting grounds. And on the way back down, he burnt down Lindisfarne, and then that was his summer holiday, and then back to Cornwall. But, you know, that is real history. There is his sword pommel. We know it's his sword pommel because it has his crest on it. And we can date it to almost the week he was there, which is quite extraordinary, really. So I've got quite a lot of experience of university digs, helping university digging, how that works, what I can do to assist. You know, are there PhDs in it? Are there masters in it? What level of education and help is there? And quite often, actually, people coming out on digs can, or doing research, can understand whether they really want to pursue archaeology as a career. It's giving them the ability to do that in a, shall we say, not quite a safe environment, but an environment that is not too commercial. And we found that very useful for people. Some people have, after they've had 3 weeks of digging in cold weather or really hot weather, just think, hey, this is not for me. And they go off and do something else. So we're giving people the opportunity to do that. I think from my experience with St Andrews and Fife, it would be a good thing to do here. And Durham does have a good reputation from the point of view of archaeology. So it would seem we could help each other, I think.
Any other questions? Yep.
Do you have any parts of the site that you want to prioritize for excavation?
Gosh, I mean, there's more than just excavation. Excavation is the sort of end result of an awful lot of research and everything else too. Because we've never done excavation here, I'm not altogether sure. I know what personally I would like to prioritize, if nothing else, to satisfy my own curiosity. But if people are throwing a lot of research, groundwork at it, they might say, hang on a minute, this looks more interesting. From my own point of view, I would love to put some trenches through what would appear to be a Bronze Age right through to Saxon settlement, which is in a prime position on top of the hill. I've had a bit of input from UEA as well, purely from the point of view that a friend of mine is a professor of medieval history there, and he's been out a few times and backs up what I think is there. So it would seem a natural place to begin, but I'm open to all and any sensible suggestions.
I think now might be a good opportunity for me to jump in and just let you all know what our planned next steps for the project are. So like Patrick has said, this is very much at the beginning. Fieldwork is a way off yet. It's probably not going to be until next year at the earliest. So what we're hoping to do over the next term and into the summer is basically do all the desk-based research. So we'll look at maybe creating weekly meetings where people can come, you can volunteer for different parts that you're interested in. We've done some preliminary looking at the historic environment record, things like that. So we have a base layer ready for you guys to pick and choose what you're interested in and to help us with. We're aiming to have a project brief ready by the end of the summer, probably. So we're very aware that, you know, it's going to be a slow process. We're starting right at the beginning, but this should hopefully be an excellent opportunity for all of you, because this is the part that you never do volunteering on community gigs. So the real focus here is making sure that you get as much experience in areas that are difficult to get experience in as possible. We'll then have a look at some grant proposals. Maybe we know that there's some money available from the student union, so we're starting conversations with them with how they can support a project like this. But Alexander and I have done some research. There's things like the Royal Archaeological Institute, the local Council for British Archaeology group there. So again, alongside the project proposal, the project brief, looking at how we can actually fund this. And yeah, just slowly working our way towards it, finding out as much as we can. We're going to do everything as it should be done, because we are proper archaeology students.
Yeah,
yeah.
I completely agree. It's as I say, having worked with St Andrews for a number of years, with both the Student Archaeological Society and the County Archaeology Society, plus Historic Scotland, I do understand and know that the hurdles and the bureaucracy and can be almost overwhelming, but also how grants, if you can prove that it is a worthwhile project, you can prove that there is an educational resource, and I mean, in the particular case I was involved with, there is a national interest as well. There is money forthcoming for this sort of thing. And I've also found, particularly with PhD students, that they've been able to access funding more easily if there is a good base for them to work from, which already has funding. It's not just an idea, it is a well-known process there.
Yeah, so there's lots of kind of preparation work. So after this, I will send out an email. We've got a form up that I think was emailed out, but I'll email out again. So if you're interested, just sign up and we'll create a mailing list specific to the project. And I will look at creating like weekly meeting, probably hybrid, so people can join online and we can keep that going through the summer. Drop in whenever you're available. If not, we can communicate via email so that you can do work when you want to. You're not stuck to a specific time. Yeah, we've started talking to people in the department. I know David Petts is vaguely interested in getting involved. He's got his eye on the medieval port. But yeah, it should be a really, really excellent project.
Well, we've got, I have an awful lot of maps, information. At one time, Hemley, there's only 21 of us in the parish now. At one point, there was over 500 people because there was a lot of industry, the commercial coprolite digging, salt pans, a water-powered sawmill, tile works, brickworks, a great deal of the village has, shall we say, fallen, well, it just doesn't exist anymore because the employment went with the advent of artificial fertilizers. For instance, the coprolite went. With the sea wall breaking, then a lot of the farmland disappeared under the sea. So there's a really good historical trail here. I mean, a really interesting thing is the parish allotment records, which show that there were over 50 allotments. Well, families 250 years ago were generally fairly large, and I've got the name of the allotment holders, the sizes, the whole lot. Well, you can have a pretty good guess that most families were probably a minimum of 5, often double that. So you have 50 allotments. That doesn't include the cottage gardens, the farmland, and all the rest. It means that there wouldn't be 50 allotments if there weren't quite a lot of people. Even in my lifetime, I can remember burning down a farmhouse. I know that sounds rather a generous thing to say, but it was an old clay building. We burnt it down because it wasn't wanted anymore. And a couple of days later, we ploughed it in and drilled peas over that bit of ground. And as a small child, I can remember the ground steaming with the heat of the fire because we hadn't waited another day to drill the crop. You know, so there's a lot of history that has disappeared physically on the ground, but it's still there in records and memory of people around and about.
We've got a real range of things that we can look at, and this is very much like a student-focused project. I know I'm the one up here being important currently, but we want all of you to be involved and to have your say to make sure that you're doing what you're interested in. So this really is kind of a student project by students for students. So yeah, make sure you get involved.
That's good.
There we go. Patrick's approval.
I wanted to ask, so Time Team, I'm sure you know, are starting up work at Sun Who next week, I think. So that's the second year.
I've had some involvement with Time Team before, but
Okay.
not down here.
I just thought it'd be interesting to see, perhaps, again, this is supposed to be a Durham thing, just with you, but I think if we had the ear of Time Team, perhaps, or just their platform to perhaps share our finds or perhaps our research, I think that would be really beneficial because they're all for kind of community projects and community centered things. It's all very, you know, their kind of funding platforms are very accessible. I think, you know, if we could make some sort of short YouTube or short sort of documentary in the end, that would be probably the best way to get outreach, get popularity and awareness of this. So
I know from my end, I'm very interested in community archaeology, so that's something that I personally would very much like to do, kind of making sure things are open access on social media. I don't know if there's a young archaeologist club in the local area, but kind of reaching out and getting that community involvement, which also then means we're eligible for more money, which is useful. But it's a really nice thing to do. So that's something that maybe some of you are interested in. So when we get to that point, that's definitely something that people can volunteer to help out with as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment we're at a baseline. I think probably the first thing to do is everyone put forward what they're interested in. We have to remember that this is still a working farm. This is, you know, any dig, for instance, needs to fit in with our crop rotation, things like that. You know, whatever we do needs to fit in with the farm as a working farm. It's not a park, it's whatever. It is a working, hard-nosed farm. So we need to look ahead, and if we know that in 2 years' time, say, that field is going to be stubble from, I don't know, say from September to November, that's the time to schedule a dig. So that there's quite a hard-nosed practical side to this, which fits into our farming. And it would be an interesting way of looking. But for instance, on a very basic level, we grow potatoes. We have destoning machines that go through and take the stones out of the ground before the potatoes are drilled. That puts a lot of the stones, a lot of the flints and that sort of thing out of context and moves them. So it's worth looking at which way did the potato machine move? Which side did it put the stones? And then you can begin to work backwards and think, well, that flint probably came from further up there, but it's been moved maybe 5-6 meters by the machine, and you can work backwards from that. So it needs to be linked in with farming as well. And I don't think anybody's ever done that. I can't find any archaeology society that has linked the process of farming to the process of archaeology. A lot of people simply ignore or don't know how the farming works. you know, even depending on the depth you plow, do you plow left? Do you plow right? Do you power harrow? Do you cultivate? How is the ground worked? Because the majority of archaeology won't be too deep. And so it's been influenced by the farming systems over millennia. And now that with modern farming, everything happens faster, it's more powerful. Things that even 50 years ago people wouldn't have considered possible are now routine. So there's always this element to consider, which I don't believe anybody's ever done.
I mean, we are very, very lucky in that regard, in that Patrick has been so incredibly wonderful and helpful to us so far. So we're so incredibly grateful that he's come to us with this opportunity, because it is very rare that you get someone who is quite so willing to put up with a bunch of archaeology students who want to go and rootle around on their farm. So for that, we're very grateful.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. As I say, I've thoroughly enjoyed having St Andrews students, all the ups and downs, the pros and cons, perhaps not quite the right word, but the enormous entertainment it has provided me when, you know, when I've said to people, please don't walk through that field because there is a bull in that field, and they say they were sprinters at school, and they discover that the bull is also a sprinter. So no, I mean, it's a process of working together. It's a process of everybody gaining, benefiting, but in a safe way, if you like, without the hard-nosed commercialism. It's an educational opportunity as well as an exploration opportunity. And also you can throw in the much more pertinent things like sea level rises, carbon. You know, this is very much, I'm losing about 1.5 acres a year to the sea at the minute, which doesn't sound a lot, but it is quite a lot year on year. My house now is 14 inches above sea level, and the cellar is full of salt water. You know, this is sea level rises for real, and how it's affecting land, how it's affecting farming, how it's affecting business. It's a very pertinent topic. What's it doing to the archaeology? A very good example of the positive of sea level rises is with the very big tides we're having, we're getting far more erosion as the tides go out. Our creeks are getting deeper. We're finding bog trees down on the London clay. So we know we're pushing back anything from just around the last ice age to a little bit further down the creek. We're looking at some of the red crag, which is 25-30 million years old, and we're bringing up raised teeth and shark's teeth. They wouldn't, if we hadn't had big tides, we wouldn't be finding those. So there's a positive to, everyone moans about the negativity of it. Let's look for the positivity of what's happening as well.
Do you have any other questions that anyone would like to ask?
Just on that point, because I think it's very pertinent, the sea level change and the environmental change. I think something we could be able to, or we should do, is some sort of coring work, perhaps some augering work if possible, because as you say, if it was a promontory for thousands of years and it was a kind of a rich location to settle, I think some kind of picture of the landscape change over perhaps from the woodland of pre-Bronze Age times to perhaps landscape clearance. It'd be nice to have that kind of data available, even if we can't do anything like radiocarbon data. It's just some inferences would be.
No, I completely agree. And I know a lot. I know it. I have a pretty good idea of what it was like, purely from the point of view of, as a practical farmer, I can see where the edge of the river was before the port silted up. I can see, you know, what people say, gosh, there's a long steep bank down there to the ditch. Well, actually, that's the edge of the river. That's an old shore level. You know, the fact it's got trees and a hedge on it now, but it's actually the old shoreline.
Right.
People don't, so that is the practical knowledge and workings that I can bring to it.
Do you have any other questions? Well, I think that's covered hopefully everything as an introduction. I will send something out with kind of time slots, figuring out what sort of weekly slot works best for people. And yeah, we'll get started.
Okay. So what can I do? Well, Rosie, fire me through some ideas, fire me through some thoughts, and let's let's put our heads together and see what we can come up with in the way of a project. It would be quite good to have something that rolled on a bit, not just a 1 year, but we actually rolled it. So there's something to look forward to, for want of a better way of putting it.
I think if you can send any maps over so that we can all start having a look at those, that would be excellent. I mean, basically, just if you've got any useful information that you can share that we can start picking through, that would be wonderful.
I mean, I've got mountains of information. It's really, where does one start and stop? Right, let me have a think. And in the meantime, as I say, put together some thoughts, a plan, and let's chew it over and see what we can come up with.
Definitely do that. So I'll let you know as soon as more of a plan. Hopefully in the next week or so, we should have a rough outline of what we might hope to do. Yeah, hopefully by the end of term, we'll know what we're doing roughly.
Okay. So you're thinking of starting this at the beginning of next academic year?
I think with time constraints, we're all dealing with that in the next few weeks. But it just gives us time to really make sure we've got a proper project brief, we know what we're doing, and make sure that we get all the appropriate permissions, let the people who need to know, things like that. So we should potentially, I know a few of us were talking about maybe doing some geophysics, some boring like Archie mentioned. So potentially if we can secure funding over the summer to start with those less invasive surveys, that would be wonderful. Yeah, the main thing is just making sure that we have the money to do whatever we're doing and to do with the aftermath as well. It's one thing to fund excavations, it's another to do all the post-excavation work.
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I know that one. Yes. Do you have access to labs and that sort of thing?
I know that some of the professors have preliminarily said that they're interested, but obviously they can't commit just yet without knowing full details.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking of, for instance, when you're doing your soil sampling, your soil analysis, things like that. Yes. Whether you were going to do the work in-house or send it off. That was all I was thinking. Whether you have access to the university science labs.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the labs do paid for work. So if we need to, if we get funding, we'll be able to do it that way. But yeah, we should hopefully, I'm hoping to have a meeting with someone in the department in the next week or so to be able to establish what they're able to provide to the project. So hopefully, again, next couple of weeks, we should have a lot more answers and know where we're going.
Okay. No, that all sounds good. Right, Rosie, that's excellent. Well, fire off some ideas and we'll see what we can come up with.
Are there any last minute questions from anyone before we say adieu to Patrick? Okay. Well, it was lovely speaking to you, Patrick. And we're all very excited to see where this goes.
Okay. Yes. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.